Hello, it's Dr. Cindy with this week's Mental Health Moment. Legend has it that despite his prowess with freeing himself from various types of confinement, there was one time when Harry Houdini was not successful in unlocking a lock. After bragging that he could set himself free from any jail cell in the country, on one occasion something went wrong. As the heavy metal doors clanged shut behind him, he quickly got to work trying to get the lock to open. But after laboring for 2 hours, he finally admitted defeat and collapsed in frustration and failure against the door. In doing so, the door swung open, for it had never been locked at all. But because in his mind it was locked, his focus was limited to trying to unlock it, and he didn't consider that he could simply open it and walk out of the cell. Now, I don't know whether or not this story is actually true, but it does provide a useful metaphor for the power of our thoughts and mindset in keeping us confined unnecessarily. There are many ways that this happens. I've talked in a number of these videos about how we stay in our reflexive ways of responding and interacting to situations and people in our lives based on the coping strategies we developed as children and the template in terms of how we perceive ourselves in relation to other people. We also get confined by limiting beliefs that make us question, for example, our ability to be successful in new endeavors, that cause us to feel insecure about ourselves as being attractive or interesting to others, and create doubt that desired changes are possible or feasible. Sticking with what is familiar and known to us is another way that we limit our choices and hold ourselves back from new experiences. And habit is a very powerful force that encourages us to do things that we always do in the ways that we always do them. When we try to deviate from this, we meet internal resistance, and the pull is to go back to the old habit rather than doing things differently or trying something new. So, today I'm going to talk about how to start expanding out of the comfort zone of habits, reflexes, beliefs, and other patterns that we have all developed for ourselves. As the name implies, our comfort zone is where we feel safe and in control. It is familiar and gives us the sense of things being relatively predictable and orderly. And if there's some type of disruption or increased stress in our life, our comfort zone may become even smaller as we try to buffer ourselves from the effects of the challenging situation. I would venture to say that everyone's comfort zone shrank to some extent when we were told to shelter in place due to COVID. Suddenly, it no longer seemed safe to leave our own homes or to interact with people in the outside world who were not in our personal sphere. And after so many months of those restrictions, many are now finding it difficult to venture out of the comfort zone within which they have been living for so long. Because our comfort zone is the space within which we feel most safe, we tend to stick with what we know, not only in terms of our ways of coping and reacting to things, but also in terms of activities and experiences that we seek out and participate in. Even though operating within our comfort zone gives us a sense of stability and security, it can also make us stagnant and stuck. Our desire to stay where it is comfortable may lead to complacency, where we find ourselves feeling discontent and dissatisfied with the circumstances of our lives while not thinking there's anything we can do about it. If this goes on long enough, depression can even ensue. One of the challenges of trying to step out of our comfort zone is the discomfort we experience. This can range from mild unease that naturally occurs when we deviate from what is habitual and routine to anxiety or even outright fear. And since fear is linked to survival and is our brain's way of alerting us to possible danger, the tendency is to stay right where we are, where we have convinced ourselves that we are safe. Depending on the particular situation we are contemplating, that fear zone may include a lack of confidence in ourselves, such as when we are considering applying for a new job or asking someone out on a date. It might involve concern about what others might think about us or how they might react, particularly if it goes against the ways of coping and interacting that we developed as children. It may also come from specific fear about our actual physical safety when we are thinking about doing something that seems risky to our health and well being. When something outside of our usual way of doing things piques our interest or intrigues and inspires us enough, that may enable us to step out of our comfort zone in order to explore something new. This requires us to purposely enter that fear zone where we feel uncertain and uncomfortable and uneasy as we open ourselves to the new experience. When we can move through and out of the fear zone, we get to the learning zone where we acquire confidence and skill in dealing with whatever the challenging situation is. With enough time and exposure to that new experience, we may actually expand our comfort zone to incorporate it as an ongoing aspect of our life. What was once perceived as something to be feared no longer has that effect on us. And the more we get ourselves to work through our fears and expand our comfort zone, the more we get into what the positive psychology field calls the growth zone, where we set goals, find purpose, reach our aspirations, and can fulfill our dreams. Stepping out of our comfort zone requires us to override the warnings that our brain gives us about needing to follow the program and not deviate from our patterns and plans. This includes being willing to tolerate the discomfort and uneasiness that will persist for a while as we contemplate engaging with something new. This is where many people get stuck because anxiety and fear are very powerful and compelling forces that can be challenging to ignore. It can feel too difficult to push past these, particularly when we experience momentary relief when we give in to the fear and choose to stay right where we are. Sitting with the anxiety and comforting yourself through it is an important strategy for trying to move forward to something new that you want to experience. Remember the analogy I gave before, the brain being like a smoke detector, not a fire detector. In other words, the brain can only alert us to what it perceives to be potential danger. It is up to us to determine if there is actual danger or if it is just a false alarm. When we take time to connect to the anxiety and reassure ourselves that we are safe and that everything is okay, then we can shut off that alarm, breathing in the anxiety wherever we are feeling it in our bodies and blowing it out with our breath while telling ourselves that we are safe helps clear away the smoke and reset our system. I also want to talk about how we tend to think about decisions that challenge our sense of comfort. There are four things that I encourage people to consider as they are contemplating making a change or doing something new. Number one, is this a matter of life or death? Now, this may sound like an extreme question, but I pose it because we often inadvertently react to choices and changes as though our very lives depend on them. Thankfully, in most cases, this is not true, but our innate fear response is not going to make this distinction for us. Again, the brain is going to signal potential danger because its primary interest is keeping us alive. So it sends us the same warning signal whether we are about to give a speech or are in the path of an oncoming car. We are responsible for figuring out the appropriate risk and then the appropriate reaction to have and action to take. When we can recognize this and consciously take our decisions out of that life or death arena, it enables us to right size them down to a more appropriate and less scary proportion. In turn, that can bring relief for that level of fear that we are experiencing. Consideration number two, is my decision permanent and irreversible? We often react to our choices as though we will be forever stuck with whatever it is that we decide to do. In part, this happens because we don't want to have to go through all of the turmoil of making another tough, big decision if the one we're making now doesn't end up working out the way we hoped it would. So when we contemplate accepting a new job, entering a new relationship, or purchasing a new home, we think in terms of it being a permanent change because we don't want to have to make that level of difficult decision again. Unfortunately, this also makes the importance of that decision feel much more extreme than it has to be. Now, of course, we want the changes we decide to make to turn out well for us, but there is no way to know with 100% certainty how a new experience will be until we actually experience it. And as much as we hope the new job, relationship, or home will end up meeting our needs, we can take some of the pressure off of ourselves as we contemplate such decisions by recognizing that none of these has to be something we stay with forever if we find that we want something different in the future. For now is a much less daunting level of decision to make than forever. Question number 3. Is there only one right answer or right decision? We often approach decisions as though there is only one option that could end up being positive for us, with the assumption being that all of the others will be negative. This is a false dichotomy in most cases, as many new situations are much more complex and nuanced than the good versus bad distinction that our brain wants to make. Otherwise, these decisions would actually be pretty easy, as it would be obvious which one was the right one to make. Additionally, I suggest that thinking about any decisions we make as being right or wrong or good or bad only adds to the stress of the decision-making process. Every new thing we consider doing has the potential to give us experiences that we enjoy and find rewarding and fulfilling, as well as some that we may not appreciate or like. All of those experiences are useful and beneficial to our growth and learning if we allow them to be. How else can we know that we don't like something without giving ourselves the opportunity to try and experience it? Trying something and not liking it isn't a failure, which leads to the fourth consideration. What are you expecting? Our confidence in making decisions for ourselves often hinges on how we feel about decisions we've made in the past. So if you carry significant regrets about things you've chosen to do, that can make current decisions more challenging and may keep you stuck in inaction and staying in your comfort zone. In this case, continuing with what you know feels preferable to doing something different that you're worried will be another mistake. When we don't trust that our actions will lead to desired outcomes, it feels risky to make changes, not only because we fear they might lead to us experiencing something unpleasant or enjoyable, but also because we don't want that to cause us to feel badly about ourselves again. I would suggest that if things you try often don't turn out the way you expect them to, maybe the problem isn't with the experience you chose, but with the expectations you imposed. The more we define in our minds what a positive outcome would be for a decision we make or something new that we try, the more likely it is that we are setting ourselves up for it falling short of our expectations. Does that really make the decision a mistake? If we can shift our thinking from desired outcomes to desired experiences, that can help us be more open to venturing out of our comfort zone and trying new things. So rather than expecting, for example, that the date you are going on must lead to a long-term relationship or the partner of your dreams, how about looking forward to it as an opportunity to meet and get to know someone new? You can reasonably expect that everyone you encounter and everything that you try will give you a new experience that you haven't had before. You can't really know how the actual experience will feel until you are in it, so why not step out and see what happens? If your goal is to simply have new experiences, there is no way to fail. One final word for today about our comfort zone. It will always be there. Nobody can take it away from you or close it off so you can never return. We need our comfort zone to help ground us and give us a sense of security, particularly during very stressful or challenging times. Our emotional comfort zone is a lot like our physical home. We create both as a refuge and a place to rest, and we likely spend a lot of time there. Both provide shelter, familiarity, and a means of retreating from the outside world. But in neither case can we grow if we stay locked inside. At some point, we have to step out of our homes and out of our comfort zones in order to interact with others, participate in activities, and explore the richness of experiences that life has to offer. So I encourage you to think this week about what experiences you might want to start exploring for yourself and what it will take for you to be willing to open the door. Take care and have a good week.